Typically, when people think of obesity, they think of somebody who has a lack of willpower, somebody that's over consuming, under moving their body. You have a new paradigm shift here when it comes to people that are overweight and obese. The fact that they're actually starving their body. So we'll start off there.
Sure. Well, the usual way of thinking about obesity is according to the notion calories in, calories out, that we, in our modern food environment, consume too many calories. There are all these tasty, energy dense foods around. And in our sedentary lifestyle, we don't burn off those calories. So they build up in our bloodstream, they get forced into fat cells, the fat cells grow, we gain weight, and ultimately develop obesity. This view considers all calories are alike to the body. It doesn't matter whether it's cheesecake or cherries. 100 calories or 100 calories. So, since all calories are alike, the only way to lose weight by this view is to eat fewer of them or burn more off with physical activity. It sort of makes sense because we know that we can cut back calories and lose weight for a while, but that's the rub. Whereas most people can lose weight for a few days or a few weeks, or very disciplined people for a few months, very few people can do so afterward. And that isn't just a question of discipline or willpower. It's not just behavior, it's also biology. We know that with weight loss, the body fights back in predictable ways. One is with rising hunger. And look around us. Few people can ignore hunger just driving in the car. We have our cars situated so that we can keep drinks and food and all that. So according to the conventional approach, you have to ignore your hunger, not just for a day or a week or a month, but permanently. And even if you could, the body fights back in other ways, most notably with slowing metabolic rate. So rather than think of obesity as a sort of a behavioral issue that we have to control our energy balance, the carbohydrate insulin model says we've reversed cause and effect, that overeating doesn't make us fat. It's the process of getting fat that makes us overeat. Now, that might sound a little surprising, but think about the adolescent growth spurt. In a teenage years, a boy or a girl might be consuming hundreds or thousands of excess calories, and they're growing really rapidly. But which comes first? Does the overeating make the adolescent grow, or does the rapid growth with deposition of those calories into new body tissue make the adolescent hungry and eat more? So according to the carbohydrate insulin model, that's happening with our fat cells. The fat cells are being triggered to take in too many calories. They're too few for the body. And unless we address that problem, it's going to be a battle between mind and metabolism most people will lose.
Well, let's get into the nuances and continue the story here. So fat cells are taking in too many calories. What happens physiology-wise? What gets triggered in the body when that happens?
Well, when we eat, calories flood in more than we need for our metabolism at the moment, and some of it gets stored. And we know that this is just basic physiology 101. So after a big meal, some of those calories wind up being stored in liver, some of it gets stored in muscle, and importantly, calories get stored in fat. Then when we're not eating, so after the stomach has emptied from the calories have been absorbed from the ones we've eaten in the meal, we have to shift from storing calories to pulling calories out of storage to keep our blood sugar and the calories in our blood from crashing. Of course, the brain needs calories 24/7. If we run out of calories for a moment, we would lose consciousness. So the problem is that with the fast digesting carbohydrates that have flooded our diet, especially since the low-fat diet era of the late 20th century, these rapidly digesting carbohydrates, what are we talking about? White bread, white rice, potato products, sugary breakfast cereals, sugary drinks, these low-fat snack foods, they turn into sugar after eating literally within minutes. Eat them, and minutes later, and you can see this if you have a continuous blood glucose monitor, blood sugar is surging up. And that makes more of the hormone insulin be secreted than would be the case with any other food. Um, I call insulin the miracle grow for your fat cells, just not the sort of miracle you want happening in your body. What that insulin does is program a few extra calories to get sucked up into fat cells. And then when you need those calories, 3, 4, 5 hours after the meal and fasting, that insulin, the prolonged effects restrain those calories from getting out of the fat cells. And all you need is a little shift. So a typical person who's developing obesity might be lean in high school, develops obesity by middle age. That's kind of the typical development of obesity. That's the storage of 10 calories extra a day. That's less than 1 teaspoon of sugar in calories. So a subtle shift day in, day out could make all the difference. And so the carbohydrate insulin model says that unless we consider calories based on their metabolic effects, that all calories are alike, unless we consider how those calories are affecting our hormones and metabolism, we're going to have a tough row to hoe.
I'm excited to introduce you to Organifi Red Juice. This caffeine-free drink will give you an energy boost. It contains powerful adaptogens, made with real berries, and it's sweetened with monk fruit. Click the link in the description to save 20%. And now back to the show. So what I think I hear you saying here is the fact that when we have meals that are higher in carbohydrates, we're going to spike blood glucose, which is going to spike insulin. Insulin is going to drive that glucose into the fat cells. So that's going to be problem one when it comes to obesity. And the second part I heard you talk about there was the fact that when insulin's in the blood, and this is even after a few hours, because of the higher carbohydrates, that's not going to allow fat cells to release calories into the body and burn those calories. Do I have that right?
That's right. We have um, many potent hormones whose whole job is to regulate the calories in the blood. In addition to insulin, there's glucagon. That's a hormone that's made right next to insulin. And it's very important. It's actually the opposite of insulin. It's insulin's antidote. People with type 1 diabetes, if they take too much insulin, they literally take glucagon as a rescue because glucagon helps pull calories out of storage. So we want to get the right balance between insulin and glucagon. There are many other hormones as well: adrenaline, growth hormone, and a newly recognized exciting class of hormones called the incretins, like GLP-1, upon which some of these new weight loss drugs are based. But all of these hormones are ultimately there to fine-tune the foods that we eat and that we've evolved to eat, which we eat in an episodic way, right? We're not eating every hour. We eat a few times a day, and we need to distribute those calories throughout the day because our metabolism is continuous. Our meals are episodic. Our metabolism is continuous. So all these hormones are there designed to smooth out that process. So you can fill up the tank, with the meal, and then it gets nicely burned. But these modern processed foods, but it's not just all processed foods, and we can maybe drill down on this more. It's the processed carbohydrates. Processing fat doesn't change the digestion rate. An olive and olive oil digest slowly, even though that olive oil is still highly processed. Um, a boiled egg and a scrambled egg digest pretty much the same. It's the processed carbohydrates. Once you take like a whole kernel wheat grain, like a wheat berry, and you mill that into a fine flour, or once you take a fruit and you suck out the sugars, then it digests very quickly. So you can think of this as naked carbohydrates. And these naked carbohydrates are the problem from a metabolic perspective.
Okay, well, let's get really practical here. So we have the overview of what happens with the glucose, the insulin, and why the way we're eating these days typically is a problem. But let's go really granular right now into the solution and what somebody would want to eat and how somebody would want to eat to work with those hormones instead of against them.
Right. Well, so starting with the observation that our metabolism is continuous. We need to be It goes up when we're physically active, it goes down a bit when we're sleeping, but basically it's running. We've got an idle of the motor, it's going continuously. So we'd like so the easiest on the system is to eat in a way in which the calories from the food are digested slowly, so they don't overwhelm the bloodstream and make massive surges in hormones and then lead to this crash later. So a diet that conceptually you can have carbohydrates, but those carbohydrates need to be minimally processed in an intact structure. So again, it's like wheat berries or steel cut oats, um, especially the tropical fruits, more so than things like grapes or more so than things like watermelon or banana. So the whole minimally processed carbohydrates, especially with a good amount of fat and protein, is a package which, when we eat, digests slowly. And in addition, the protein and fat slow down gastric emptying. Your grandmother probably might have used the expression, the food sticks to your ribs. You know, that that encapsulates what's actually happening. That food stays in your stomach longer, and when it gets into the intestines to be digested, it takes longer for the body to extract out the calories from the food. The food makes it down further into the digestive tract, where it provokes satiety hormones like this incretin GLP, which has many beneficial effects. And so that's a way of eating that makes it, from this perspective, much easier to control hunger and body weight and maintain metabolism. The other extreme of that would be like a sugary beverage or a typical breakfast recommended during the low-fat diet era, which like bagel, fat-free cream cheese, and orange juice. That's, from this perspective, a hormonal nightmare. It's going to digest very quickly, leading to the surge of blood sugar and insulin. The calories are going to get stored away, and then a few hours later, when you need the calories, they're not going to be as available. You're going to get hungry. And if you resist the hunger, your body's going to fight back by slowing metabolism.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
Coffee actually helps fat cells. It stimulates lipolysis. It causes fat cells to shoot out some calories. Not everybody can tolerate time-restricted eating, and not everybody needs to.